Hi, I'm Movie Man. I'm an octopus who reviews movies, and today's review is going to be on.
Up the road, that's where people get into trouble.
Obviously, I'm aware that this movie is based off of the video game of the same name from about a decade ago now, I think. I just need to start off by making something pretty clear. I've never actually played the game before. Now I do know of the game, like from the research that I've done on the game. Like, I know what the game is about, and I kind of know a bit like how the game kind of works and stuff. But I myself have not actually played the game before, so I am watching this movie as just kind of a general movie viewer. But anyway, in terms of my expectations for Until Dawn, the movie, I didn't think that this movie honestly looks too bad from the trailer. Like, I know a lot of kind of fans of the game weren't exactly too pleased with that trailer that we got, with kind of how, it was like basically kind of trying to go for something a bit different from the games. But I mean, I did also see some people kind of trying to defend the movie and its whole kind of thing to it, because like cause I know some people said that, like, apparently if you talk this way and if you just kind of made the game its own movie, then it would kind of feel like a bit of a generic film. I don't really know. Like, I mean, since I've never actually played the game myself, I can't exactly comment on this too much, but it just kind of, from what I was seeing, it honestly didn't look too bad, and like, plus it's also directed by David F. Sandberg, who I honestly think is quite a solid director. Like, he pretty much is known for his horror movies. Like, he directed Lights Out and he directed Annabelle Creation. So, he pretty much like has, his mark in the horror genre. But I know there, for a bit he actually moved away from the horror genre and moved into the superhero genre, because of course he also directed the two Shazam movies. But since there's obviously not gonna be a Shazam 3 due to, the fact that DC has been rebooted and stuff, it seems as if Sandberg has decided to go back towards the horror genre, and now he's giving us the adaptation of Until Dawn. So anyway, my expectations were like, not too high, but I didn't have them too low either. Now before going into the movie, I did see alright that the film was getting like a fairly polarizing response from critics, and it seems as if like the actual fans of the games weren't exactly all too pleased with this one from what I have seen anyway, but yeah, anyway, I saw the movie for myself, and well, since I've seen it for myself, what did I think of it? Well, okay, I'll say this. I don't think the movie is like all that bad. Like, it's definitely not as bad as some of the other horror movies that we've gotten in like the last year or so. But with that being said, yeah, I don't think this movie was really great either. Yeah, I'll be honest, this one was just kind of a mixed bag. But anyway, so it's time for me to actually get into my thoughts on the film since we are already a few minutes into the video. Anyways, right, yeah, getting into my thoughts. First off, the cinematography. I will give the movie this. It actually is pretty well shot. Like I will give some props to the movie's cinematographer because they actually did a pretty solid job. Like, I won't lie, there actually is some cool shots in this. Like, we get kind of some nice shots, like, of the house and stuff, and, kind of all, like, the surrounding areas. I do think all these parts are well shot. Even some other shots as well, like some shots inside the house are pretty cool, and even like the shot of the timer as like, it's resetting. I don't think that's pretty cool. And like even some of the shots like inside this dark forest and stuff, and like we actually do get some pretty cool shots in there. Like I won't lie, I think overall, the cinematography in the movie is good enough. Now, I wouldn't call it absolutely outstanding, but I thought overall it was good enough for what the film needed. So the cinematography I think is quite good. The editing in the movie I think is alright. There are some decent edits in this, like particularly kind of when some of these characters are being killed. Like we do get some decent editing, but I don't think especially like as I mentioned when the timer is resetting, like the way they kind of edit that little shot I think is actually pretty cool. But with that being said though, I do feel like the editing did have some flaws. Like at one point in the movie we do get a flashback scene, and I don't know, but like I felt as if this whole flashback scene was kind of just awkwardly inserted in at this point. Like, and I don't really know, it just kind of came off as like a bit weird to me, like with how it kind of just abruptly showed up in the film and how it was edited. It also didn't help that I wasn't the biggest fan of the flashback scene, to be honest. But also I do want to mention that there is a scene in the movie as well where like they're on this one night and we're kind of being shown flashbacks as well to some of the previous nights. Now I don't want to get too much into like what happens in the scene because it's technically kind of a spoiler for the movie, but like honestly I wasn't really a fan of that scene. Like with how like we're on this one night and it cuts to this other night and then the movie's kind of just showing us like just a bunch of stuff that have happened during some of these other nights. It kind of feels like the movie's just, trying to skim over a lot of these things and stuff, which I personally wasn't a fan of that. I just thought it was kind of weak, to be honest, and it was just like a bit weird editing wise. I just didn't really think that worked. I thought that was just a bit stupid, to be honest. So yeah, I say overall I think the editing isn't too bad, but yeah, it does have its flaws. In terms of the film's pace now, like the movie overall has a runtime of an hour and 43 minutes. So like it's not that long of a movie, but like in terms of how the movie itself was paced, like I didn't think the pace was too bad. Like, I thought the way they paced some of these different nights was okay, but like I mentioned earlier, that one scene where it's just coming back showing us some of the previous nights and stuff, yeah. I kind of felt like that was a bit of an issue with the pace as well, with how like it kind of just seems to skim over some of these events just to get to this point in the story. Yeah, I know, I really feel like they could have approached that a bit better because with how it was presented in the movie, it just kind of came off as a little rushed to me. Like, I didn't really think the pacing was too bad aside from that, but yeah, I just didn't really think it was all that great either, so yeah, I guess the pace was like a bit of a mixed bag in that regard. Now in terms of the sound and music, I will say there are some okay kind of sound effects at some points during the movie, like with kind of the sounds of like some of these Wendigo monsters and like when we have the sounds of these kills and stuff. Like there are some solid sound work during these scenes. But in terms of the film's music, in terms of the score, yeah, the score was honestly just very forgettable to me. Like, honestly, I hardly remember the score in this film. So, yeah, I think the sound and music is a mixed bag. The sound work is decent, but the music is just very forgettable. In terms of the characters and the acting, now we have kind of our main group of characters. Like, I'll be honest, I just wasn't really a fan of them as characters. Like, I thought they were all, like, mostly a bit underwritten. Like, I just wasn't really the biggest fan of the characters. Like, the main character, Clover, we do get a bit of depth with her character, with, like, you know, how her sister has gone missing and she wants to find her sister. Like, that could have worked, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, I just wasn't really able to get invested in it that much, and, like, we don't really actually get to see much of Clover's relationship with her sister outside of that one flashback scene I mentioned, and honestly, I thought that flashback scene did quite a poor job of adding depth to it. Like, she could have been an interesting character, but I just wasn't able to get too invested in her, and yeah, it's the same with some of the other characters, to be honest. Like, I just don't feel like I was able to care enough about them with the way they're written. Like, some of the characters are just a bit annoying, and honestly, they make some pretty dumb decisions at points. Well, I think especially Nina and Abe, who are like the couple of the group, I gotta be honest, I really just did not like either of their characters, especially. Like, they both made some pretty stupid decisions, and they were both just pretty unlikable with what they did in the movie. I just didn't like them, and, like, in terms of the acting from these young actors, like, I don't want to knock on them or anything. They kind of try, but I don't really think they're given the best material to work with, and honestly, the acting in this just really isn't that great at times. Like, there's kind of just some pretty kind of awkward line deliveries at points, and yeah, I mean, maybe some of that could come down to the script as well, but I don't know, I just really didn't think the characters in this were all that great. Now, we do have a pretty noticeable supporting character in this. I won't talk too much about the character, but this character is played by who is, I think, definitely going to be probably the most noticeable actor in this cast, being Peter Stormare, who, of course, he's kind of in here because he's actually in the game. Of course, he was in the game as well, and now he's actually in the movie. Like, now, if you are familiar with the game, you're familiar kind of with his character and stuff, like, you might be able to kind of know, like, what's up with his character in this movie. Like, he wasn't in this movie all that much, but I will give him this, like, when he is on screen, he hams it up a bit, and I do think he's definitely the most fun in terms of the acting. Well, I think it is down to the fact that Stormare is already, an established actor and stuff, so, like, it's kind of no wonder he's gonna have probably the most charisma here. But, like, yeah, honestly, aside from Peter Stormare, the acting wasn't too great. I think maybe these actors just needed better material to work with. And, like, I'll give the movie this, like, some of these, like, monsters, these creatures that they have to face, like no Wendigo creatures or, like, this masked assailant, like, they actually do genuinely look quite cool. Like, I will give the movie this, like, they do use a lot of, like, practical work in this, like, a lot of these, like, monsters, and, like, a lot of the kills in this movie as well, they're done practically, which honestly I thought was quite cool. And like I will say, the kills in this movie were actually pretty solid. Like as I said, like they were actually done practically, which I thought really did make them very cool. Um, and like yeah, I do overall think like they actually did a solid job in terms of like actually having some gory kills in this. So they did do solid in that aspect. In terms of the plot of the movie, like the movie kind of does have a bit of an interesting concept. Like, I mean, honestly, I know like this isn't exactly all too accurate to the games, but here's the thing: I do feel like this movie could have like a solid idea, like if you kind of just look at it as its own thing and maybe not maybe see it as something a bit different from the games, with how like this whole idea of like these kids show up at the cabin and they all get killed, but then they're revived on the same night and they're on a time loop where they have to try and survive, until dawn. Here's the thing. I do think that could actually work. Like that actually could be a solid concept for a movie. But I just feel the execution wasn't the best. Like I really do feel like, the cool monster designs and the gory kills pretty much kind of carries it. Like, the movie wasn't all too great in terms of suspense. Like, this really could have worked, but I just feel as if, because of the fact I'm not really able to care that much about the characters and that they just spend a lot of the runtime kind of just arguing with each other and just kind of being a bit stupid. I'm just not really able to get invested all that much to where I actually feel the suspense. I feel like, I actually want them to survive in the end. Like, had they just made me care more about these characters, then I would have been more invested in the whole concept with the time loop. But because I wasn't all that invested, I just didn't really care that much. As I said, it had a solid idea, but I really do feel as if like the gory kills pretty much just carried it along. Because other than that, it's like it just could have been written better to where I care more about the characters, and also had they not just skimmed over a few of the nights, I feel just maybe just showed us a bit of those nights, then like had they just rewritten this a bit more, then I feel like I could have cared more about it. But like as it goes, it's not horrible, it's not as bad as other horror movies, but I just don't think it's all that great either. In terms of the film's narrative structure, like, we do, like, have our kind of main plot, with our characters trying to survive until dawn, and being stuck in the time loop, but we do kind of have other things going on. Like, as I said, the movie tries to delve into some of the characters, like, with Clover and her sister having disappeared, and kind of some of the stuff with Clover and her relationship with her ex, who is also one of the characters himself in the movie. Like, some of this stuff could have been interesting, but since I just wasn't able to care enough about the characters, I just wasn't able to get invested in it, as I already mentioned. And eventually the movie kind of does delve into like the time loop and stuff and kind of what it all means, and I think like this is kind of trying to, tie into the game. This whole aspect is kind of mainly fan service. Is like this kind of put in there more so for the fans to appreciate. But like yeah, even like as it goes, like being with executing this concept, as I said, they had the idea there, but had they just written the characters better, had they got me to care more about the characters, then I would have cared more about the concept because really, as I said, it's mainly the kills, the cool monster designs, and the cinematography that is really carrying this. Because other than that, this movie's just not great. I don't think it's terrible, but it just really could have been better, honestly. So yeah, overall, I didn't hate Until Dawn, but I definitely think it could have been better. Like, don't get me wrong, there have definitely been worse horror movies in the last year or two, and there have definitely been plenty of worse video game movie adaptations than this. But this still just feels like wasted potential a bit. Like, there are some things I do like with the movie. Like, as I said, it does have an interesting concept. There's cool monster designs, there's some cool, gory, practical kills, and there's some decent cinematography. But I just like, had they gotten me to care more about the characters, then maybe I would have actually cared more about what was going on, but as it stands, I just wasn't really able to connect with the characters that much. And so also, I feel like that was kind of what let me down here a bit with this one. Yeah, so like, I don't know if you're gonna enjoy this if you're actually a fan of the game. So it seems as if this movie, like, isn't exactly too much like the games. Like, if the movie sounds interesting to you, like, if you'd be interested to kind of see this concept, and if you are kind of just looking for a standard horror movie with kind of an interesting gimmick to it, then maybe this might be worth a watch, but like, overall, like, it's not a terrible movie by any means, but it was just disappointing, and if you ever do feel like watching it, I think it's definitely one you should just wait for streaming for. So yeah, overall, not a terrible movie, but definitely could have been better. So with all that said, I'm going to give Until Dawn a 5 out of 10. So with that, I'll see you guys next time, and bye.